Spiritism and Spirit World Around Us group. We are here, Facebook streaming live on the Facebook page, Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us. You can get to that page on my either Facebook, just look that name up, Spiritism and the Spirit World Around Us, or there's a link to it on my blog, nwspiritism.com. I'll put that my name in that blog on the screen below me in just a few seconds. But first, I wanted to make sure tonight we are here at 7 o'clock Eastern, 4 o'clock Pacific, all time zones in between and around the world, for you to learn more about Spiritism. It's very exciting. I'm so happy to bring this message to you. Please tell your friends about our group. Tell your friends to come on Wednesday. I'm going to give a meeting every Wednesday at 7 Eastern, of course, all the time zones. And I invite you to be part of it. I'm getting more and more people are coming, and it's a wonderful thing to present to you what Spiritism is all about. Now, Spiritism was created by Allan Kardec. Codified, I should not have said created, I meant codified. And what he did is he talked to many mediums who talked to different spirits, and he asked a series of questions, and he didn't write down the answers to those questions unless the medium's messages in different geographical areas around Paris and France were very similar or the same. So this is just not one person talking to one spirit calling themselves some big name. This was organized, and they said they came from, as promised by Jesus in the New Testament, I'm going to send you a consoler to bring you more information. And this is what Spiritism is. They're bringing us more information. The doctrine of Spiritism, it really can be summed up as follow the golden rule. So it's not one that we're going to tell you that if you don't do what we say, you're going to be damned or go to hell. No, none of that. It's just to lay out information for you about the spirit world, why we are on earth, the processes of the spirit world, and what is going on. Okay? So this is, I think, is extremely important. We're just putting information on the table. It is up to your free will, which everyone on earth has. Although I have said in other talks in my books that the trials and tribulations we go through, they are pretty well planned. And they're all planned for our edification. None of this is planned for punishment. It's planned for education. Karma is real. Karma educates us. Karma is used to educate us for the wrongs we've done in past lives. Not to punish. It's to teach us not to do what we did again. So tonight is very exciting. So now the first book that Allan Kardec wrote, of course, and one I would recommend everyone to read is the Spirits book. But one of his lesser known books is the book Heaven and Hell, which I have here on the cover with me. Let me bring up the Spirits book. But so this is the one we're reading tonight. And what started yesterday talking about angels and demons, and we talked about the first happy spirit. So we're going to go through in this episode, in this Facebook live streaming, we're going to go through what happy spirits, what he said spirits, we meant by happy spirits, spirits who believed in the spirit world, who were spiritual, who were not overwhelmingly materialistic. I mean, we all have to be somewhat materialistic. I'm not saying that we should go into a cave, right? And actually, Spiritism says, don't do that. You're here to help other people on earth as well. So now we're going to go a couple more spirits tonight. And we're going to say what happens when a happy spirit, when a spirit who believes in God, who believes in the spirit world, who believes that they have an immortal soul, what happens when they pass over? Next week, we will talk about the more unhappy spirits. First, let me bring up the Spirits book so one can see it. Just want to get that in your mind. That's really the one to start with. Now, I do recommend for those, you could always read Spiritism 101, the Third Revelation, which kind of gives you a summary of Spiritism and what it's about. And that might be good to read that first. You can get that on on this Facebook page. Go to the file section on Spiritism, the Spirit World Around Us. You can download it for free. It's also available for 99 cents on Amazon Kindle. It's also available on paperback. So that is something I would recommend, if you wish, to read that first. You can read it for free on PDF. Also, I'd like to point out that all Allan Kardec's books that I will be going over, they're all available on PDF, so they don't cost you anything. But of course, you can get them if you click on the picture of Allan Kardec, which is the same picture I use on my website, nwspiritism.com. You will go to the EDI CEI bookstore and get these books, for a very reasonable price. Of course, you can get them also on Amazon.com. So now let's talk about happy spirits and what happens when they move over. So we're going to talk about today a Mr. Jobard. He was the director of the Industrial Museum of Brussels. He died in the city of Brussels on October 27th, 1861, at the age of 69. Now, Mr. Jobard was one of the honorary presidents of the Spiritist Society of Paris. It had been intended to evoke him at the seance on November 8th, when he forestalled this intention by making spontaneously the following communication. Now, I'll read this communication to you. Of course, this was a communication during a mediums meeting in Paris, which Allan Kardec, I believe, was present. I have been in mediums meetings when there are communications from spirits who have passed over. It is very interesting. I'm not a medium. I was sitting at the back wall listening, and I can tell you this is, and of course, the medium meetings I usually go to are the medium meetings where they are trying to help spirits who are lost, who are not quite sure what's going on. And it's amazing. When you understand Spiritism, a lot of these spirits, when people talk about this, they don't really understand. Some of them don't understand they're dead. And if they do understand they're dead, they don't understand the world they're in there. And when other spirits try to tell them, they don't really trust them. They don't feel that connection. They feel the connection to other live people, because that's really what they feel they were, right? Live physical bodies. In essence, of course, we are immortal spirits. In our vast majority of time, we are spirits. So the medium meetings I usually go to are ones that they're helping these people. So it's good to read about a happy spirit. So this is what Mr. Jobard said. I am here, I whom you are trying to evoke, and who desire, first of all, to communicate through this medium, whom I have been trying in vain to induce to write for me until now. I wish to tell you of my impression at the moment of the separation of my soul from my body. I felt an indescribable shaking of my whole being. My entire life, my birth, youth, and manhood came back all at once to my memory, which showed me every incident of my career with wonderful clearness. I was conscious of no other desire than that of finding myself again in the regions revealed to us by our beloved belief, which is Spiritism. And then all of this tumult died away. I was free, and my body was lying lifeless beside me. Ah, dear friends, what an intoxicating happiness it is, the stripping away of the burden of the earthly body. What an unspeakable joy to take in the view of this glorious immensity around us. But you must not fancy that I found myself all at once at the summit of felicity. No, I'm among those who, though they have learned something, but have yet a great deal more to learn. I was not long in remembering you, my brothers in exile. My sympathy, my good wishes are with you. Do you care to know who were the spirits that received me on my return to the other life, and what were my first impressions on crossing its threshold? Those friends included all whom we invoked, all of our spirit brothers who have shared our labors. What I saw was a splendor that cannot be described. I have set myself to discerning what is true in the communications that have been received by us, and I'm ready to correct any erroneous statements, ready, in fact, to be the knight errant of truth in the other world, as I was when in your world. So then they started asking him some questions. Let me put this first here so we can see the title. Here's the question. Question 1. During your lifetime, you requested us to call you when you should have quitted the earth. We therefore do so, not only in order to comply with your wish, but also and especially to renew to you the expression of our sincere and lively affection. So, just want to stop there for a second. When You are, when you or a friend, when you pass over, it is just changing a body. It's actually getting rid of this physical cocoon, this physical body. Your spirit, which attaches itself to your physical body through a perispirit, and you can find more information on that on my website, nwspiritism.com, right down here. There we go. It is, I'm not going to say it's nothing, but it is just a transition. Do not be afraid of death, and don't grieve overly for those who have passed on. If they have led a decent and life and they are, good people, your family, they will be most certainly in a much better place. All they have done is they have finished their educational period on this earth. Then they'll be in this spirit world where it is a much better atmosphere. I'll carry on. To renew to you the expression of our severe and lively affection, and in the hope of learning from you, for you, more than any other, will be able to give us precise information respecting the world in which you are now. We shall therefore be very glad if you have the kindness to reply to our questions. And he answered, what has now to be done is to assist you to a knowledge of the spirit life. As for sympathy, I see it. I no longer merely receive the expression of it through the ears, which is a great step in advance. I'd like to explain that too. In the spirit world, thought is action. Thoughts are real. Thoughts are visible. That is why even lower spirits, more ignorant spirits, when they are around you, they see your thoughts. And this is when he said, I see it. Right? Spiritism say. And as the spirits get higher and higher, their thoughts have more action and more power. So that's why on earth, our best thing we can do is not only to be a better person, and keep our mouth shut when we should, right? Don't gossip, don't be mean to people, don't seek revenge. But also, even in your mind, rewire this brain. Get rid of your primitive emotions, hate, envy, right? And replace them with love and honesty and charity and fraternity. Question 2. To fix our idea so as not to talk vaguely, we begin by asking you in what part of the room you are. Well, he says, I'm close to the medium. And you would see me under the appearance of Jabbar, who has often been seated at this table. For your mortal eyes, not yet unsealed, can see spirits only under their mortal form. It says, would it be possible to render yourself visible to us? And if not, what does that obstacle present you doing so? He says, well, the obstacle is your personal condition. A seeing medium would see me. No others could see me. So, let me get to, okay. So can you remember when you have been in the same state before your last existence? And do you find yourself changed since then? The answer is, I remember my anterior existences, and I perceive that I have improved. I see and I assimilate what I see. As my former incarnations, my spirit was in a state of confusion, and I can perceive nothing but my terrestrial gaps. Then he asked, do you remember your last incarnation but one which preceded your existence as Mr. Jabard? So this is, if you've read these books about past life regression, past lives are real, right? Spiritism tells us we have past lives. Spiritism also tells us we really shouldn't worry about that. Many people ask, well, if we have this life and if we don't remember that, if we don't know we're being reincarnated, we don't know our last life, how are we going to learn? Believe me, you'll learn, because you'll go through trials and tribulations that will teach you. And actually, your learning could be obstructed by knowing your past life, because then you already have an attitude towards something. Your son or your daughter, your husband or your wife may have been your enemy in a past life. God and Jesus does not want conflicts. That's why Jesus said, forgive 70 times 7. So when you have great conflicts with people, most probably, not always, you will be reborn close. You may marry that person. They may be your son or daughter. You may be their son or daughter. Imagine if you were the son or daughter of parents who you really love, and yet you realize you murdered one of them. That would be horrible, would it not? Okay, let me give the answers. I know people are waiting. In my last existence, but one, I was a working mechanic devoured by poverty and by the desire to perfect my work. I have realized in my life as Jabbar the dreams of the poverty-stricken workman, and I praise God whose infinite goodness has caused the plant of which he had sown the seed in my brain to grow and fructify. The next question, have you already given communications elsewhere? He says, I have, as yet, given very few communications. In many places, another spirit has taken my name. In some cases, I was near the spirit, but was not able to communicate my death. I was not able to communicate. My death is so recent that I am still affected by certain terrestrial influences. I can only express my thoughts where I find perfect sympathy. Before long, I shall be able to act with entire freedom, but I cannot do so yet. So again, this is part of the truism of Spiritism. It takes you a while. First of all, when you die, it's like you don't automatically wake up and you're just ready to go. Now, some spiritists are, some very high spirits are, but usually it takes you a while to recover, get your senses. It's like birth, right? The baby just was born and is totally confused. What is this? I'm breathing air now. It's not easy. And you're not really allowed to remember your past lives until you're ready. Some people, it would be just too much. So when a man dies, is widely known, he's evoked on all sides. 1,000 spirits are prompted to assume his name. This has already happened to me in several instances. I assure you that few spirits are able to communicate directly after deliverance, even with the aid of their favorite medium. So remember that. And this is another thing that people don't understand when they're talking to medium. Even with Chico Xavier. For medium, so if you go talk to a medium, know this, that Spiritism and the higher spirits say that the spiritual level of the medium will determine the level of the spirit talking to him or her. Therefore, if you have a medium that all they really care about is money, and they still may be a functional medium, but they will talk to very low spirits who won't see much of the future and may just be frivolous and may tell you wrong things. Just a warning here. So, do you see the spirits who are with us this evening? And the answer is yes. I see close to you Lazarus and Aristides, a little farther off, hovering in space. The spirit of truth, besides these spirits, is of greater advancement. I see a crowd of spirit friends who surround the assembly, taking an active and benevolent part in the proceedings. You may esteem yourselves happy, dear friends, for good influences are about you, warding off the suggestions that would lead you into error. Okay, so this just backed up what I said. When there are untrained medium meetings that any spirit could come and start talking to that medium. This is why the Catholic Church is somewhat correct saying you shouldn't talk to spirits, because it is not the safest thing to do. This is why before you have a mediums meeting or before you try to invoke spirit or like you're on that Ouija board or whatever, you need to really learn and study. And I would recommend most heartily you first have a group of mediums, right? Not just yourself, because that is, you need that extra power. But I would recommend, let me find it. Oh, I don't have it here. I would recommend Allan Kardec's The Spirits book. No, I'm sorry, the Book of Mediums. So let me find that for you, because I think it's important that one is cautious when one tries to talk to spirits. That is not an easy thing to do. And it is, here we go. Oh, let me put this on because I want people to see these book covers. And of course, again, this is, that's called the Mediums book. This is all available on PDF. And this goes through, the Mediums book is a great book, by the way. And it goes through all sorts of different types of communication, all sorts of things. So if you are interested in being a medium, please read the Spirits book, read the Mediums book. There are books under Louis' series of books um, the domains of mediumship, which I would also recommend people to read. Prepare yourself first before you try to become a medium. I know it's exciting to people. To me, I'm not a medium. I enjoy going to medium meetings when I'm asked, but it's not important. Important is my own spirituality and helping other people get their spirituality. Okay, let me finish. So let's keep talking to Mr. Jabard. So during your life, you shared the opinion of those who suppose the Earth to have been formed by the agglomeration of 4 planets. Do you still hold this opinion? This is back in 1860s, right? He says that opinion is erroneous. The recent discoveries of geology prove the convulsions that have occurred in the history of Earth in the successive eras of its formation. The Earth, like other planets, has had its own life, and God had no need of so disorderly a cataclysm as it implied in such an aggregation of planets. Water and fire are the only organic elements of the Earth. The next question. You also believe that men might remain for an unlimited period in a state of catalepsy, and that the human race has been brought in this state to Earth. Is this still your opinion? So he said, all that was a mere illusion of my imagination, always apt to go too far. So the state of catalepsy, which is like you're asleep, right? And this does happen. So people who have no belief in the spirit world, belief in God or any type of religion, no spirituality, and they actually believe that when they die, there's nothing. And of course, your mind affects a lot, right? Because thought is action, and they will be in a sleepy mode. So my idea was derived from the exaggerations of Eastern legends. Believe me, I've already suffered not a little in recalling the illusions to which I was too prompt to attach credence. Do not lose sight of this fact. I've already acquired considerable knowledge, and my intelligence being prompt, I may say so without vanity, to apply the wide and varied researches of my anterior career I had retained from my preceding incarnation. The love of the marvelous and the complex acquired in my study of the figments of the popular fancy. I have not yet given so much attention to purely intellectual subjects, such as those which you are interested. How could I do so, dazzled and carried away as I am by the wondrous spectacle that I see around me? The tie of our common spiritist belief, a tie far more powerful than you human beings can imagine, is the only thing that can attract me to this earth that I abandoned, not with joy, for that would be an irreverence toward the Creator, but with profound thankfulness for my deliverance. So he goes on to say he's beginning to live more peacefully, less disturbed by, as he later on, by evocations from every quarter. And he said that for a time they pursued him all the time. But he says now he's passing into the region of human forgetfulness. They got this like for about a year afterwards. And he says, I beg that when this is the case, my sincere and serious friends will continue to invoke me, that we may resume our study of questions which have hitherto been treated of too superficially, and that thus your friend Jabard, completely transfigured, may be enabled to be of use for you. So now let's go to the next one. This person is name of Samuel Phillips. Oh, hello. Oh, you know what? Interesting, but about death. Okay, do not be afraid of death. But for some reason on my B live stream, I'm not getting your name, so I'm not quite sure who's asking this question. But it says interesting, but about death. So what do you mean about death? So death is they are talking to this spirit who had just recently passed over. So are you asking about the feeling of death? So this is taken a lot in Andre Luis's books, and then I've talked about it in A Case for Reincarnation, is death is like a birth. You are leaving one environment, you're transitioning from one environment to a new environment. Oh, hi, Jacob. Good. Oh, thanks. I don't know why sometimes this doesn't work. and I can't see who's asking questions. Sometimes it does, sometimes it doesn't. It must be defects in the streaming. So I'll give you a story on death. So what usually happens for people who are assisted, most of these by happy spirits that are coming over. And as Joe Bart said, he had people all around him. So spirits will come around you as you're laying on your deathbed, and they will help you leave your body, and they will make sure the perispirit, that cord, will be cut, right? Just like the umbilical cord is cut when you leave your mother's womb. And then, which they don't cut it, it will go away naturally. And you'll have time of confusion, but things will come back to you. Just like Jabard said, he started remembering one of his past lives, which is unusual that fast. And he started remembering, people he knew in the spirit world, etc. So that is a very, interesting part. And we'll learn more when we'll talk about Samuel Philippe. Now, Allan Kardec tells us in his book that Samuel Philippe was an upright man in the fullest acceptation of the terms. He was never known to do a wicked thing or to have willingly injured any human being. His devotion to his friends was unbounded. Whoever needed his aid was sure to attain it, even though at a loss himself. Trouble, fatigue, sacrifices of all kinds, he willingly underwent for the sake of being useful to others. And he did this naturally, without ostentation, and was astonished that anyone should give him credit for doing so. So far from showing resentment against those who wronged him, he was just as ready to oblige them as though they had only done them good. What a great guy. When people repaid his kindness with ingratitude, he would say, "It is not I whom to be pitied, but they." Though extremely intelligent and gifted with much natural talent, his life was laborious and full of heavy trials. He was one of those rare natures that flower in the shade, of whom the world takes no note, and the splendor of whose goodness is not recognized by the human eye. He has derived from his knowledge of Spiritism an ardent faith in the future life, and great resignation in bearing the ills of the present one. He died in December 1862 at the age of 50 after a long and painful illness, sincerely regretted by his family and friends. So he was evoked several months after his death and responded to the call in the following conversation. The question is, have you a clear remembrance of your last instance upon the earth? He answered, perfectly. This remembrance came back to me little by little, for at the moment of my departure, my ideas were confused. Again, we hear this all the time. Will you kindly tell us, both for our instruction and interest we feel in your exemplary life, how the passage from the earthly life to spirit life was effected in your case and in the situation in which you find yourself now? Oh, good. So this should tell us exactly how he felt when he was passing over from the physical world to the spirit world. Willingly, this narrative will be useful not only to you, but to me. By turning my thoughts back to the earth, the comparison will cause me to appreciate more correctly the goodness of the Creator. You know how full of sorrows was my life. Thank God my courage never failed me under adversity, and now I rejoice to have borne my troubles courageously. How much I should have missed had I yielded to discouragement. Oh, that's a good truth. And I've done that before. I've yielded to discouragement. And one of the secrets of a good life and spiritual ascendancy is don't be discouraged. Just know whatever's thrown at you, keep on and try to have a good attitude. I know it's tough, and believe me, I haven't listened to myself in my previous years. I shudder to think that through giving way to weakness, I might have lost the benefit of all that I endured and have had to begin the lesson over again. Oh, friends, may you be thoroughly persuaded of this truth. Upon it depends your future happiness. No, it is not to pay too much for this happiness with a few years of suffering. If you could but feel how small a matter are a few short years in comparison with eternity. If the last of my existence appeared to you have been in some degree meritorious, you would not have said as much as those that preceded it. It is only through continuous struggles with my evil tendencies that I have made myself of what I now am. To efface the last traces of my former faults, it was necessary for me to undergo these last trials, which I had voluntarily accepted. Let me stop right there in the quotes. Again, I talk about this in my book, The Case for Reincarnation. We create our own destiny. Mostly, if you're a lower spirit, they will figure out what you should do. Once you get to one of the levels of heaven or close on a higher level of the lower zone, you can talk with your spiritual friends, and from that, you can determine what your trials and tribulations should be. And I talk about the whole process of reincarnation in my book, The Case for Reincarnation. So let's move on. So to efface the last traces of my former habits, it was necessary for me to undergo these trials, which I voluntarily accepted. So I just said, the firmness of my resolution gave me the strength to bear them without murmuring. I now bless those trials. Through them, I have broken with the past, which is now for me only a remembrance, and I can contemplate with legitimate satisfaction the headway I have already made. You have made me suffer when I was upon the earth, who were harsh and unkind to me, who humiliated me and filled my cup with bitterness, whose treachery often reduced me to the hardest privations. I not only forgive you, but thank you for all you did. You little thought that, intending to do me harm, you were really doing me so much good. It is to you that I owe in great measure the happiness I enjoy, for you gave me the opportunity of forgiving and returning good for evil. The divine providence placed you upon my road in order to try my patience and to exercise me in the practice of the most difficult branch of charity, the love of our enemies. We have been told that over. Forgive, right? Forgiveness is so important. You do not need to teach anyone the lesson. The Spirit will, through reincarnation and different trials, will correct whatever faults that person has. Concentrate on your own faults. Forgive everyone. Doesn't mean you have to be a milquetoast and let them cheat you of money or anything like that, right? But if they do somehow, forgive them, because probably in some past life you did the same. So I'll carry on. Do not be impatient at this digression. I now come to the questions you have addressed to me. Although I had suffered horribly during my last illness, I underwent no death struggle. Death came upon me like sleep, without effort, without any shock. Having no fear of the future, I did not seek to retain my hold upon life. And I had, consequently, no need to struggle against the action of desegregation. The separation took place without effort, without pain, and even without my knowledge. Again, I read this quite a lot in other books, is if he was really sick and he maybe lost consciousness, they may have taken that point is to take his soul, his spirit out of his physical body, and they would awake him. They would probably take him to some sort of spirit hospital and awake him there. I'm not aware how long this sort of sleep lasted, but it was only for a short time. My awakening was a calm that offered a delightful contrast to my previous state. I no longer felt any pain, and I rejoiced in this deliverance. I wished to get up to walk about, but a torpor that was not at all disagreeable, that was, on the contrary, rather pleasant, held me motionless, and I gave myself up to it with a sort of enjoyment, without trying to understand my situation. However, without doubting that I had left the earth, everything about me seemed to be like a dream. I saw my wife and several friends on their knees in their room and weeping, and I said to myself that they, no doubt, thought I was dead. I wished to tell them they were mistaken, but I could not articulate a single word, from which I concluded that I really must have been dreaming. And I was still further confirmed in this idea when I saw myself surrounded by various persons whom I loved, but who had long been dead, and also by others who I did not recognize at first, and who seemed to be watching over me and awaiting my awakening. This state was made up of alternations of lucidity and of somnolence of sleep, in which I alternately recovered and lost the consciousness of my me. So, remember, when you pass over, you are you. Actually, you are more than you, because you'll bring more information. Now, carry on. gradually, and again, he's talking about how he's, he's still in his room. His body is now dead. His spirit is probably just maybe above his physical body. Other spirits are around him, working on him, getting him so he comes out of this, this unbirth, right? This transformation, segregation of a spirit from his body. So now he says, gradually, my ideas became more distinctness. The light that I had seemed to see, as it were, through a fog became brighter. I began to recover my consciousness. I presently comprehended that I no longer belonged to the terrestrial world. If I had not knowledge of Spiritism, my illusion would doubtless have lasted much longer. My mortal envelope was not yet buried. I looked upon it with a sort of pitying contempt, congratulating myself on getting rid of it. I was so glad to be free. I breathed at ease like the one who escaped from a foul and stinking atmosphere. An indescribable feeling of happiness pervaded my whole being. The presence of those I had formerly loved filled me with joy. I was not in the least surprised to see them. It appeared to me perfectly natural to do so, but I seemed to have found them again after a long journey. One thing surprised me much. At first, that we understood one another without pronouncing a word. Our thoughts were transmitted in a single glance as through by some sort of fluidic interpenetration. Again, we've been told that many times by different spirits, that spirits can communicate by thought. And there's actually a couple ways. They communicate by putting words in your brain, putting images, and they actually will use all these things together. Let me put a picture up here so you don't have to look at me the whole time. There. So, nevertheless, I was not entirely enfranchised from terrestrial ideas, right? Because I'm telling you, it takes you time. The remembrance of all that I had suffered came back from time to time to my mind, as though to make me more fully appreciate the happiness of my new position. I had suffered much in my physical body, but I had suffered still more morally. I had been the butt of malevolence, a prey to 1,000 perplexities that sometimes occasion more annoyance than do more serious misfortunes, because they keep us in a state of constant anxiety. Let me stop there for a second. This constant anxiety this is why I recommend my book, How to Live Inner Peace Through Spiritism. Because once you understand why you're on earth and you're going through educational trials and tribulations, you don't worry about it as much. And you can get rid of your anxiety and your nervousness and your stress and learn, right? Because who can learn when they're nervous and stressed? It's very difficult. So the impression left by those worries was so far from having entirely disappeared that I sometimes asked myself if I were really freed from them. It seemed to me at times that I still heard certain disagreeable voices. I feared a return to the troubles by which I was formerly so often tormented. And in spite of myself, I trembled. I touched myself, so to say, to make sure that I was not dreaming. And when at length I acquired the certainty that I was really delivered from the troubles of the earthly life, I seemed to have thrown off an enormous load. It is then really true, I exclaimed, that I am at last delivered from the cares that are the torments of human life. And I thank God for this deliverance with the deepest gratitude. I felt like a poverty-stricken mortal who, having suddenly inherited an immense fortune, cannot at first realize the change in his position and continue for a while to dread the torments of want. Ah, if men could understand the nature of the future life, what strength, what courage they would derive in adversity from their conviction of its reality. What would they not do while they are upon earth to secure for them the happiness that God has prepared for those of his children who have been obedient to his laws? They would see how worthless are the earthly enjoyments by which they are tempted in comparison with the enjoyments of the life to come, of which they think so little. Well, it was one heck of a statement. I mean, and that really encapsulates so much of what Spiritism is trying to tell us. There's no reason for us to through strife and by cheating people or whatever to gather money to get that latest car or go out to those new nightclubs or impress that man or woman. There's no reason. It's not worth it. Anything here on earth in our physical body is temporary. In the spirit world, you are immortal. You will never change. You will never grow old. You won't get sick. You will never change. The sun will burn out. You'll still be around in the spirit world. So try to put things in perspective. Again, this is what I talk about in my book, How to Live, because I think is very, very important for people to understand. Here we go. There's now 3 of us here on the board. Is the people understand that this life is just temporary and it's not that important, right? It's important. Well, that's wrong. I shouldn't say that. It's important in the fact that we are here to change our attitude and our character, to remove ourselves of primitive emotions and to really transform ourselves into a nicer, more caring person. Put this back there. So that was fantastic. Now they ask, has the spirit world, which seems so new to you in comparison with our own world, seems so to you of little importance, and the numerous friends you have found there, caused you to lose sight of the family and friends you have left behind you upon the earth? He answered, if I could forget them, I should be unworthy of the happiness I am now enjoying. God does not reward selfishness, but punishes it. The world in which I am may make me indifferent to the earth, but not to the spirits who incarnate upon it. It's only among men that the prosperous forget their companions in misfortune. I often come back to visit those whom I was connected in my earthly life. I rejoice in their affections, remembrance of me. Their thinking of me attracts me to them. I join them when they confer together. I share their joys and am saddened by their sorrows. But my sympathy for them is not the anxious distress of human sadness, because I can see their troubles are only temporary and for their own good. Another very, very important point. I rejoice in the thought that they will all arrive sooner or later in this happy abode, in which suffering is unknown. I apply myself especially to aiding them to become worthy of this abode. I endeavor by every means in my power to suggest good thoughts to their minds, and above all, to fortify them in their resignation to the divine will. My greatest grief is to see them retarding their own happiness by their want of courage, by murmuring, by doubts respecting the future, or any reprehensible action. I try to turn them aside from the evil road. If I succeed, it is great pleasure to me and to all our friends here. If I fail, I say to myself with regret, this is a new delay for them, but I console myself with remembering that it is not forever and that they'll all reach the goal in some time. He has said so many important things. The spirit world lets us have free will. So this angel you see in the picture on the screen got there through life after life after life. That angel was not made by God. That angel was helped by God and by Jesus through successive lives for them to become perfected. When we fail in our life, then our next life, we may have to learn the same lessons again. Eventually, we will. Eventually, the spirit world will create trials and tribulations for us in which they will be effective for us to learn. But let me state this. When someone does something wrong, the next life, they kind of give you a little hint in a trial, and for you to learn. But if you still didn't learn, they'll make the trial more dramatic and maybe more suffering, because that will grab your attention. So try to go through your problems. Again, I've written a book about this. The problem is a solution. And understand that, let's say someone took all your money, or someone, or you lost a bunch of money, which I have, right? And it wasn't through drugs or gambling. It was just bad investments. It's to tell you that, okay, look, you have to learn money's not that important. Your family, your life, your spirituality, you should concentrate on that. And that's what I've learned. I've learned that. And Spiritism And all this happened before I really found Spiritism. But now I used to go, oh my God, I'm so stupid. Now, though, I go, okay, that was the lesson. I understand the lesson. And this is why it's so important for people to study Spiritism, to understand what the lessons have them and to learn from them. And don't be full of regrets. So the Spirit Joanna Downs will say, if you look at your life and you've done stupid things or things you really regret, it's just like an arrow out of the quiver, right? Forget about it. Analyze it and say, okay, I'm not going to try and do that again. If you do, say the same thing. Just keep little baby steps. Okay, let's go to our last one, which says Mr. Van Durst. He was formerly employed in a government office. He died in Antwerp, 1863, at 80 years of age, which is a good old age, especially in 1863. So a medium, having inquired of his spirit guide a short time after the gentleman's decease, whether he could be evoked. And this is the reply he got. The spirit is passing very slowly out of the state of confusion. It would be possible for him to answer your call, but it would be difficult and fatiguing for him to do so. You'd better wait 4 days longer, when he will be ready to reply to you. Between this and that, he will have become aware of the kindly interest you have expressed, and he will come to you gratefully and as a friend. So they waited 4 days. And then this is what he said. Dear friend, my earthly life was of slight importance, weighed in the scales of eternity. Nevertheless, I am far from being unhappy. I am in the modest but comparatively happy position of one who in the earthly life did little wrong, and yet did not sufficiently aim at perfection. If people can be happy in a narrow sphere, I am of the number. I regret only one thing, which is that I did not know what you know. My state of confusion would have been shorter and less painful. As it was, it caused me great suffering. Think what it must be to live and yet not to live, to see your fleshly body, to be strongly bound to it, and yet unable to make use of it, to see those you love and to feel that the mental action which unites you to them is becoming extinct. Oh, what a terrible moment. How terrible to feel yourself stunned by an indefinable sensation that seizes and strangles you in an instant afterward darkness. To be alive, and okay, I'll stop right there. See, from these messages, we can see that every death is a little different, right? And it all depends on what you know and what you think. So if you really understand the spirit world, your passing will be much easier. So to be alive, the next moment to feel yourself annihilated, you strive to regain the consciousness of your me, and you cannot grasp it. You no longer exist. And you feel that, nevertheless, you do exist, but in an abyss of confusion. And presently, after a lapse of time that you are unable to measure, a time of latent desires, for you no longer have the strength to feel it understandingly. After this lapse of time, which seems to be interminable, to be slowly reborn into existence, to wake up in a new world, to no longer possess a material body, to no longer have part or lot in the earthly life, to feel that you are living the life of immortality, no longer to see about you men in heavy bodies of flesh, but to find yourself surrounded with the light and active forms of spirits, gliding beside you and around you in every direction, and in such numbers that your glance is unable to take them in, for they seem to fill the infinity of space in which they float. To see this infinity spread out before you and to be able to transport yourself through it by the mere action of your will, and they call that in Andre Luis's series of books, volitation. To hold communion by the mere action of your thoughts. Oh, friends, what a different life from that of the earth. What a brilliant life. What a life of delight. Hail, hail to these. Eternity, thou hast received me into thy bosom. Adieu, earth that has held me back for so long from the native elements of my soil. No, I want nothing more of thee, for thou art a land of exile, and my greatest happiness is nothing. But if, before quitting earth, I had known what you know, how much more easy and agreeable would have been my initiation into this other life. I should have known before dying what I had to learn afterwards, at the moment of separation, and my soul would have accomplished its disengagement with much more easy. If you are on the right road, but never upon earth can you fully understand to what that road is leading you. Say this to my son, but say to him so often that he may be brought to believe it and to learn. Let him do this. When he comes into the world in which I am, we shall not be separated. So I think that was a great survey of different of spirits who were very active, had a concept of spirituality, a concept of God, a concept of spiritism, what was awaiting for them, and their different experiences. So the question is balance. Okay. Yes, it's a question of balance between spiritualism and materialism and your own attitude and your own growth upon earth. This is something that, again, I cannot stress enough, is that we're on this earth to learn. I kind of equate this with your, who was that? Oh, who was that angel in the picture? I don't know. It was just a picture of an angel. So I'm sorry, I don't know that. It was just something I got off the internet, and I thought it was better than looking at me the whole time, because it that picture of calmness and beauty is really what is awaiting us in the spirit world, and what they've all said over and over again is to go through your trials with a good character in the land. Try to keep a good attitude, because you're on earth to learn. You're on earth to rewire your character and your attitude and your personality. Spirits call us personalities, because this physical body we have is temporary. We're actually this personality, which we go through eons of life after life and life in the spirit world, learning, trying to become a better person, learning that service and doing good is much better than bringing into our own desires and trying to take from people. This is all part of that learning experience, and it's so important to give yourself to that and to find pleasure in little things, and in being with your family, helping others, everything. And to learn how to do this, I recommend first is read about Spiritism. I think that should help a lot is to go to How You Live Inner Peace with Spiritism. You can find the link to this book. It's on Kindle and paperback on my blog, nwspiritism.com. It will also be in the links under this live stream when I upload it to BitChute and YouTube. Please share this to other people. Share this with your friends. Go to my BitChute channel or YouTube, subscribe, click the like button, share the video there too. That's really important for their algorithms, so people can understand and want to learn more about Spiritism. I think what it will do, I know what it will do, is it will bring each one of us comfort, because then you'll understand why you're on earth. You'll understand why good things happen to bad people, bad things happen to good people, why things happen to you. No one is trying to get you to punish you. They're trying to get you to learn. And the reason you have to forgive those people who do you wrong sometimes, right? They are just instruments for you to learn, right? They're like a teacher that's teaching you something and you're bored, but you don't want to learn, and you don't like the teacher. The teacher's not mean, right? You're just there because you don't want to be. And these people who are teaching you things, they may not be nice people, but they're just being used as one. They're all going through their own trials and tribulations. So pity them and love them too. Anyway, I want to say good night to everyone. It was a very wonderful pleasure for me to be here tonight. Tell your friends. Every Wednesday at 7 o'clock Eastern, we are here live book on the Spiritism and the Spirit World Facebook site. God bless you.